Catholic pilgrims, as we learn from one of Spain's most revered saints, Saint Teresa of Avila, a spirited doctor of the Church. Join me, Amy Thomas, once a week as we read from Saint Teresa's book, The Interior Castle. Hello, Catholic pilgrims. We have an interesting milestone today. Today we will end on the page that is halfway through the readings. So if you look at your book closed with a bookmark in it, you'll see it's half and half on both sides of the bookmark. This is an important milestone. We've been taking St. Teresa's book in bite-sized chunks, and that can sometimes feel like we aren't getting anywhere, but we are. We are making great progress, so congratulations for making it halfway through. I guess you could say we've rounded the top. So as I told you last time, this chapter in Mansion 6 could easily be read straight through because it flows so nicely. There isn't too many natural breaking points, so consequently it's been hard for me to find places to break at. Last time, St. Teresa explained to us that she's going to give us an idea of some of the trials one might face in the sixth mansion. She doesn't want to scare us, but she also wants us to be ready and take comfort that others have faced these trials before and come out on the positive side. So today we are going to cover the first trial that she mentions, and that is the trial of having people think badly of you because you are trying to grow in holiness. Typically, it's close family or friends that think badly of us and they try to discourage us in our pursuit of holiness. I can think of a few saints that had parents that were less than pleased at their children trying to grow in holiness. A female is St. Rose of Lima. St. Rose's mother was not pleased with her piety and treated her pretty rudely, all because her daughter wanted to forego marriage and spend her days in prayer and service to others. Another was St. Thomas Aquinas. His parents wanted him to be the abbot of the Benedictine monastery at Monte Cassino because they saw it as a prestigious position. St. Thomas wanted to be a Dominican, and his family went so far as to lock him in a tower and tried to tempt him with women. It seems bizarre that people close to us would treat us badly for trying to grow in holiness. But sometimes human behavior doesn't make much sense. Or it does, in that it shows the desire for us to want to bring people down to our level so as to make ourselves not feel bad over our lack of piety. That's what we'll discuss on the other side. Our readings today will be from the Sixth Mansion, Chapter 1, Numbers 5 through 13. A bit longer today, but you'll see how I want to keep the flow of thought. Before we begin, a word from our sponsor, Chrism Press. Attention all Journeying with the Saints podcast listeners. Do you want to add fiction that also helps you grow in faith to your reading list? Look no further than Chrism Press. Chrism Press is dedicated to bringing you stories informed by Catholic and Orthodox Christianity. The team believes that all genres are open to the Christian writer and that every story has the potential to plumb the depths of human experience. Whether you're looking for romance, adventure, humor, or something a little strange and weird, Chrism Press has something for everyone. So why not anoint your imagination with Chrism Press? Check them out at chrismpress.com and use the coupon code Pilgrim15 to get 15% off your first order. All right, let's read about one of the trials in the sixth mansion. I shall not enumerate these trials in their proper order, but will describe them as they come to my memory, beginning with the least severe. This is an outcry raised against such a person by those amongst whom she lives, and even from others she has nothing to do with, but who fancy that at some time in her life they recollect having seen her. They say she wants to pass for a saint, that she goes to extremes in piety to deceive the world and to depreciate people who are better Christians than herself without making such a parade of it. but notice that she does nothing except endeavor to carry out the duties of her state more perfectly. Persons she thought were her friends desert her, making the most bitter remarks of all. They take it much to heart that her soul is ruined. She is manifestly deluded. It is all the devil's work. She will share the fate of so-and-so who was lost through him, and she is leading virtue astray. They cry out that she is deceiving her confessors and tell them so, citing examples of others who came to ruin in the same way, and make 1,000 scoffing remarks of the same sort. I know someone who feared she would be unable to find any priest who would hear her confession. To such a pass did things come. But as it is a long story, I will not stop to tell it now. The worst of it is, these troubles do not blow over but last all her life, for one person warns the other to have nothing to do with people of her kind. You will say that, on the other hand, some speak in her favor. Oh, my daughters, how few think well of her in comparison with the many who hate her. Besides this, praise pains such a soul more than blame, because it recognizes clearly that any good it possesses is the gift of God, and in no way its own, seeing that but a short time ago it was weak in virtue and involved in grave sins. Therefore, commendation causes it intolerable suffering, at least at first, although later on, for many reasons, the soul is comparatively indifferent to either. The first is that experience has shown the mind that men are as ready to speak well as ill of others, so it attaches no more importance to the one than to the other. Secondly, our Lord having granted it greater light, it perceives that no good thing in it is its own, but is His gift, and becomes oblivious of self, praising God for His graces as if they were found in a third person. The third reason is that, realizing the benefit reaped by others from witnessing graces given it by God, such a one thinks that it is for their profit He causes them to discover in her virtues that do not exist. Fourthly, souls seeking God's honor and glory more than their own are cured of the temptation, which usually besets beginners, of thinking that human praise will cause them the injury they have seen it do to others. Nor do these souls care much for men's contempt, if only by their means anyone should praise God at least once, come what may afterwards. These and other reasons to a certain extent ally the great distress formerly given by human praise, which, however, still causes some discomfort unless the soul has become utterly regardless of men's tongues. It is infinitely more grieved at being undeservedly esteemed by the world than by any calumny, and when at last it becomes almost indifferent to praise, it cares still less for censure, which even pleases it and sounds like harmonious music to the ears. This is perfectly true. The soul is rather strengthened than depressed by its trials, experience having taught it the great advantages derived from them. It does not think men offend God by persecuting it, but that He permits them to do so for its greater gain. So strong is this belief that such a person bears a special affection for these people, holding them as truer friends and greater benefactors than those who speak well of her. Our Lord now usually sends severe bodily infirmity. This is a far heavier cross, especially if acute pain is felt. If this is violent, I think it is the hardest of earthly trials. I speak of exterior trials, but corporeal pains, if of the worst kind, enter the interior of our being also, affecting both spirit and body, so that the soul, in its anguish, knows not what to do with itself, and would far rather meet death at once by some quick martyrdom than suffer thus. However, these paroxysms do not last long, for God never sends us more than we can bear, and always gives us patience first. I am the oldest of 3, and I'm your stereotypical oldest child. I'm very organized. I follow the rules mostly. I'm on time to everything. I have a strong sense of right and wrong. I can be kind of inflexible about that. And I've always been very studious. My parents never told me that I had to get good grades in school or else. I just took a lot of pride in getting good grades and being a good student. And believe me, I know that good grades aren't the end all be all. And I don't believe that kids who don't get good grades are necessarily bad students. I'm just giving you an idea of who I am and who I was. Anyway, growing up, I had a cousin that I was very close to. Summer times were spent playing with this cousin at my grandparents' house, and we had the best of times together. We came from different backgrounds. I was raised in a two-parent household, and my cousin was raised by a single mom. The ways that we were raised were very different as well. But when we were very young, none of that mattered. We were buddies. As time went on, our lives started to take very different paths. I was very keen on school and athletics, and my cousin wasn't as much. And it's understandable, as a lot of the time their life was a bit chaotic. But each summer, I would go down to visit my grandparents, and this cousin would be there, and my grandparents would ask us how we did in school that year. And because they asked, I happily announced that I got all A's, and I was congratulated for it. My cousin at some point along the way stopped responding. Anyway, one summer when we were a little bit older, my cousin and I set off to play some tennis at the local high school. And this particular day, my cousin was being especially surly towards me. We'd had spats before, but this time seemed different. We started playing and my cousin was barely trying, like giving no effort whatsoever. In frustration, I said, "Are you going to try or not?" To which my cousin responded with, "Oh, sorry, I can't be perfect like you." Stung, I asked, "What is that supposed to mean?" And then my cousin went on a rant and unleashed on me about how I was always trying to be perfect and show up others. I was always bragging about my good grades and my athletic achievements to our grandparents, and they were just sick of it. And after yelling at me, my cousin left in a huff and stormed off back to our grandparents' house. I stood there a bit rattled. I know I had been accused here of trying to get good grades just to make others look bad, which was the farthest thing from the truth. I truly just enjoyed the accomplishment I got, and I really loved learning. I mean, I could be a bit of a Hermione Granger. I only told our grandparents about my grades because they asked, and maybe they should have asked each of us in private, but in life we have to learn to hear about other people's good news and not get envious. I was extremely hurt in the moment because it had come from a cousin whom I loved and cared deeply about, and it hurt me that she saw me in this negative light. But I chose not to let it get me down. I didn't need her affirmation, and I wasn't doing anything wrong. St. Teresa tells us today, quote, "I shall not enumerate these trials in their proper order, but will describe them as they come to my memory, beginning with the least severe. This is an outcry raised against such a person by those amongst whom she lives, and even from others she has nothing to do with, but who fancy that at some time in her life they recollect having seen her. They say she wants to pass for a saint, that she goes to extremes in piety to deceive the world and to depreciate people who are better Christians than herself without making such a parade of it. But notice that she does nothing except endeavor to carry out the duties of her state more perfectly. Persons she thought were her friends desert her, making the most bitter remarks of all." Unquote. Just as my cousin thought I was getting good grades to puff myself up and deceive others into thinking I was just the best thing in the world, we see here that loved ones can think the same thing about people who are growing in holiness. And maybe you've started going to confession more regularly, or you never miss Mass if you can help it, or you started saying a prayer before meals, and you're starting to read deeply spiritual books, or you refuse to watch the latest Hollywood movie that is full of immorality, and your friends and family don't like the change. They may accuse you of trying to make people think you are super devout and win favor in people's eyes. And hey, there are people like that, but we must be careful when judging people's motives. Oftentimes what is going on is a jealousy, an envy over this positive change in your life. Your loved one may have known you back in the day when maybe you weren't so pious or religious, and so they find it hard to believe this change. But also, they might not like the light you are shining on them. They liked it better when you were screwing up and you were both on an equal playing field. Now that you are striving for a closer relationship with God and making positive changes, they subconsciously or consciously feel guilty. And so they want to bring you back down to their level. Now, when I was a kid, I enjoyed the praise I got from my parents, teachers, and grandparents over my grades. It was good to see their proud faces and hear their kind words, and kids need that kind of affirmation. Today, though, as an adult, I don't much like that kind of praise anymore. I rarely speak about my good grades, though here I am telling everybody, because I just don't want any kind of attention that it draws. And I don't want people to think that I'm some kind of brainiac or, think I'm better than other people. St. Teresa says that people in the sixth mansion get to a point where, quote, praise pains such a soul more than blame, because it recognizes clearly that any good it possesses is the gift of God and in no way its own, seeing that but a short time ago it was weak in virtue and involved in grave sins, unquote. With our spiritual life, we should seek no praise for how well we are living out our relationship with God, because we must know and should always keep at the forefront of our mind that we are sinners, and any talent and gift we have comes from God. We should just seek humility and be satisfied to know that God sees us and loves us and is happy that we are drawing closer to Him. And He knows our motives. He knows our heart. As St. Teresa says, we should, quote, become almost indifferent to praise, unquote. Sadly, as my cousin and I moved into our teenage years, the divide between us became so great that there is a wide chasm between us. It is not my desire to have it this way, but sometimes you just have to set boundaries for emotional health. I love my cousin, and there's a lot more to the story than just this one incident, but I will always wish that things could have been different. No matter what, though, we cannot diminish our light for those that criticize us. If you are truly striving to move through the mansions and people praise you, hey, be indifferent to it. I mean, obviously say thank you, but don't let it puff you up. And if people criticize you for it, accept the cross and let that suffering draw you closer to Christ. All sufferings can be used to, quote, strengthen rather than depress our souls, unquote. Above all, make sure that you are genuinely coming to the Lord because of love for Him and no other ulterior motive. That is all for today, Catholic pilgrims. If you find a moment, please say a prayer for my cousin. I pray for this person every day, and I hope that one day they might come to know Christ. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you back here soon, and until then, live the faith boldly and travel well.